Mayor Tiffany Henyard's scandal-ridden tenure puts Dalton in crisis. The village of Dalton, Illinois, finds itself facing a financial crisis, with a deficit reportedly exceeding $3.5 million. At the center of the turmoil is Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who is now embroiled in a growing scandal involving accusations of financial mismanagement, authoritarian leadership, and possible corruption. As investigations mount and trust continues to erode, Henyard's political future hangs in the balance. Henyard's ascent to power began under unexpected and chaotic circumstances, following the death of longtime Mayor Frank Zuccarelli. With no clear consensus among Dalton's board of trustees and time running out, Trustee Christopher Gonzalez nominated Henyard at the last minute. The rushed decision, met with skepticism, was seen by many as political maneuvering rather than a merit-based appointment. Her sudden swearing-in left many residents questioning the legitimacy of her leadership from the start. Initially, Henyard pledged fiscal responsibility and a dedication to community service. But her early days in office soon gave way to a troubling pattern of erratic leadership. Political purging and questionable decision-making. Henyard quickly began consolidating power, removing key officials like Jessica Jones and Stephanie Weidman, actions many interpreted as politically motivated. Her increasingly isolated leadership style further strained relationships with other local officials and alienated parts of the community. The tensions escalated during a highly publicized conflict with Township Assessor Cassandra Stone. In a particularly disturbing incident, Henyard allegedly locked Stone out of her office during a heated dispute. Soon after, confidential documents containing sensitive personal information were found scattered outside Henyard's office, raising serious concerns about her administration's ability to safeguard residents' data. These events contributed to a growing perception that Henyard's administration lacked both competence and integrity. As Henyard's leadership style grew more combative, allegations of financial misconduct and personal vendettas began to surface. Critics accused her of using her office for self-serving purposes and retaliating against those who challenged her authority. Reports began circulating about possible embezzlement and misuse of public funds, drawing the attention of federal investigators. The FBI has reportedly launched a probe into her financial dealings rather than address the concerns directly. Henyard often framed the criticism as part of a political conspiracy against her. While she insisted her efforts were in service of the people, many Dalton residents remained unconvinced. Citing the opaque nature of her decision-making and the growing list of controversies, her approval ratings plummeted, and calls for her resignation intensified. Yet, Henyard remained defiant. Digging in with increasingly unorthodox defenses, one of the most contentious issues in Henyard's tenure has been the sudden relocation of the Township Assessor's office. The move, which lacked official documentation or a formal announcement, sparked immediate concern from Assessor Cassandra Stone and others. Henyard justified the move by claiming the heat in the building impaired her ability to work. But the lack of transparency surrounding the decision only deepened public suspicion. Critics pointed to it as another example of Henyard acting unilaterally and bypassing due process. The situation worsened when sensitive documents went missing during the move, adding to the allegations of gross mismanagement and lack of accountability. Even Henyard's own supporters began to distance themselves amid the growing chaos. Some expressed frustration that residents had not been consulted on key decisions. In a curious turn, one supporter attempted to deflect criticism by highlighting Dalton's receipt of a financial reporting award. However, the attempt to shift focus from controversy to accolades was met with public cynicism, especially given the town's severe financial deficit as the scandal deepened. Henyard began incorporating spiritual language into her public defenses. Her ally, Keith Freeman, took this even further, claiming that Henyard's leadership was divinely ordained. "God doesn't make mistakes," Freeman declared. "He put the right person here to take the lashes and have the strength to endure it all," framing her struggles as a moral and spiritual test. Freeman and Henyard tried to present her as a martyr enduring unfair attacks. But to many residents, these religious overtones only served to distract from the real issues: a lack of transparency, poor leadership, and an unraveling local government. In response to mounting criticism, Henyard began holding private meetings and restricting media access. When reporters were allowed to attend, they were frequently cut off or shut out. Many believe this was a deliberate attempt to avoid accountability. Freeman continued to defend Henyard, accusing the media of distorting the narrative and focusing on gossip rather than facts. He even provided what he claimed was proof that no sensitive documents had been mishandled. Those assurances failed to allay public concern. The controversy surrounding the assessor's office, initially downplayed as a logistical decision, came to symbolize a much larger problem: Henyard's pattern of bypassing due process, dismissing critics, and excluding the public from key decisions. Today, the people of Dalton are left with a growing list of unanswered questions. Is Mayor Tiffany Henyard truly committed to serving her community, Or is she using her position for personal gain? As investigations continue and public trust crumbles, the likelihood of her political survival appears increasingly slim. What began as a rushed appointment has evolved into a full-blown crisis, with Henyard's administration now synonymous with scandal, secrecy, and financial disarray. While she continues to insist she is a victim of a smear campaign, the mounting evidence and widespread dissatisfaction among residents suggest otherwise. Whether Henyard steps down or attempts to ride out the storm, one thing is clear. Dalton's faith in his leadership has been deeply shaken, and it may take years to rebuild the public trust lost under her tenure. Tiffany Henyard's tumultuous leadership, scandal, lawsuits, and public distrust in Dalton and Thornton Township. Mayor Tiffany Henyard of Dalton, Illinois, who also serves as supervisor of Thornton Township, has found herself at the center of a political firestorm plagued by controversy, lawsuits, and widespread public dissatisfaction. What began as a rushed political appointment has devolved into a chaotic administration marked by mistrust, alleged corruption, and mounting legal challenges. Henyard's rise began following the sudden death of Mayor Frank Zuccarelli, when Dalton's board of trustees hastily appointed her amid internal gridlock. From the beginning, her legitimacy was questioned, and her subsequent actions only deepened concerns. Early in her tenure, she controversially hired a criminal inspector without board approval and used Dalton police officers for personal security. Moves critics saw as abuses of power rather than easing tensions. Henyard's approach to leadership only increased the divide between her and her constituents. Her tendency to frame criticism as a spiritual or moral attack rather than address policy concerns left residents feeling ignored and alienated. A stark example of this disconnect came when local reporters attempting to cover positive township news were denied access, undermining Henyard's public promise to share the good things happening at a later public meeting. Frustrations boiled over as Henyard's defenders berated the media, dismissing investigations as fake news and urging the public to go check for yourselves. These confrontational tactics only fueled perceptions that Henyard was unwilling or unable to confront the real problems facing the township. Public dissatisfaction grew as Henyard increasingly failed to engage with residents or explain her decisions. During a township meeting, local resident J.S. Watts criticized her for ignoring community input on a mental health tax proposal that voters ultimately rejected. While Henyard called for civic involvement, her actions consistently sidelined the very voices she claimed to support. Her relationships with former allies also deteriorated. Trana Diaz, once a supporter, clashed with Henyard publicly, accusing her of excluding board members from key decisions and displaying unprofessional behavior. She also alleged misconduct during official trips, targeting trustee Andrew Holmes. Nate Fields, a photographer and South Holland resident who worked for the township, said Henyard promised him job security, only to fire him unexpectedly. Fields accused her of creating a toxic workplace where dissent was silenced, and intimidation was used to suppress criticism. These personal conflicts added fuel to a growing fire of legal troubles. Multiple lawsuits were filed against Henyard, including one by a Dalton police officer who had served as her personal security, and another by a former employee who claimed wrongful termination. One particularly serious case was brought by Dwayne Thrash, a former maintenance manager, who alleged that he was fired under false pretenses while on authorized leave. Thrash's lawsuit also cited violations of his First and 14th Amendment rights, highlighting Henyard's disregard for due process and constitutional protections as legal complaints mounted. So did Henyard's defensiveness. Her administration grew increasingly hostile toward critics, with accusations that she was using her position to retaliate against opponents. The pressure intensified when federal authorities got involved, hiring former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, also a former federal prosecutor, to investigate Henyard's actions at a rate of $400 per hour. The scope of Lightfoot's investigation includes Henyard's use of public funds for lavish expenses, such as expensive meals and hotel stays. One of the most infamous incidents involves a township-funded trip to Las Vegas, raising serious questions about the misuse of taxpayer money in response. Henyard claimed she was being unfairly targeted because she is a black woman in power. But critics argue that race is being used as a shield against legitimate scrutiny. Her absence from a recent Dalton board meeting, where Lightfoot's hire was being discussed, only worsened the backlash. Residents, already frustrated by her erratic behavior and lack of transparency, saw her no-show as another sign of evasion and irresponsibility. Despite continued attempts to defend her leadership, Henyard's credibility is rapidly eroding. Her claims of being a victim of political persecution seem increasingly detached from the reality of her embattled administration. The people of Dalton and Thornton Township are calling louder than ever for accountability, transparency, and responsible use of public funds. What began as a hopeful tenure has transformed into a scandal-ridden administration defined by secrecy, divisiveness, and a failure to lead effectively, Henyard's approval ratings have plunged, and calls for her resignation grow louder with each passing week. Community members who once gave her the benefit of the doubt are now asking whether the township can ever recover from the turmoil she has brought as Lightfoot's federal investigation presses forward. Henyard's political future looks bleak. The mounting lawsuits, financial scrutiny, and erosion of public trust leave little room for redemption when she step down or continue clinging to power. As evidence of mismanagement continues to surface, the people of Dalton and Thornton are left waiting, hoping for a resolution, and for the chance to rebuild from the chaos left in her wake. The fall of Tiffany Henyard. Scandal, spending, and a federal investigation rocked Dalton. Tiffany Henyard, the disgraced former mayor of Dalton, Illinois, is facing mounting allegations of corruption, financial mismanagement, and abuse of power as a sweeping federal investigation intensifies. The probe, now entering a critical phase, has revealed a troubling pattern of excessive spending, potential misuse of public funds, and a deep network of questionable associates, all of which could have long-lasting consequences for the village and the surrounding Thornton Township. At the heart of the growing scandal is a payment of nearly $900,000 over 2 years to a local prosecutor, despite that prosecutor having failed to bring forward a single criminal charge. The staggering sum raised immediate suspicions among investigators, who now believe the payment may be part of a broader scheme of corruption tied directly to Henyard's administration. Federal authorities, joined by former Chicago mayor and federal prosecutor Lori Lightfoot, are now combing through a web of connections that includes Henyard's political committee, her personal cancer charity, her boyfriend, and several trustees, 2 of whom are believed to be related to her. Grand jury subpoenas have demanded extensive documentation, including payroll records, credit card statements, and travel logs. Henyard's former burger restaurant and her deputy police chief have also been drawn into the investigation, signaling what federal agents believe to be a far-reaching and deeply rooted network of corruption. In March, reports surfaced that Henyard had attempted to obstruct the FBI's investigation following Lightfoot's appointment to assist in the probe, further intensifying speculation that she had something to hide. Henyard's top aide, Keith Freeman, is now under separate investigation for bankruptcy fraud. Freeman allegedly failed to disclose Dalton's revenues during his bankruptcy filings and received payments exceeding the approved township budget during his tenure. Beyond Dalton, Freeman is also being investigated for financial mismanagement in his role as an administrator in Robbins, another South suburban town. Despite these serious allegations, Freeman continues to hold positions of influence in both Dalton and Thornton Township, prompting questions about whether federal authorities are negotiating with his legal team for potential cooperation in exchange for reduced penalties. Former FBI agents have speculated that new witnesses and informants may emerge, complicating Henyard's position further and potentially exposing more misconduct. Henyard's use of taxpayer money is perhaps the most visible aspect of the growing outrage. Over the past year alone, she racked up over $12,000 in publicly funded travel expenses, staying at luxury hotels like the Four Seasons in Atlanta and the Marriott Marquis in New York City, often flying first class. One hotel stay reportedly cost a jaw-dropping $133,000. A previously reported $26,000 trip to Las Vegas only further fueled public fury, especially as Dalton continues to struggle financially. These expenditures, combined with Henyard's 6-figure salary, paint a picture of a public official prioritizing personal luxury over the needs of the community. She was elected to serve. The contrast between her lavish lifestyle and the economic realities of the people of Dalton has enraged many residents, who now view her actions as a gross betrayal of public trust. Critics argue that the funds she used for her personal comfort should have been directed toward local services and urgent community needs. Despite the growing mountain of evidence, Henyard has remained defiant. She has dismissed the allegations as politically motivated and racially charged attacks aimed at undermining her authority as a black woman in power. In a particularly controversial statement, Henyard accused black trustees in Dalton of betraying their community, saying, asterisk, "You should all feel ashamed of yourselves because you are all black and you are sitting up there beating and attacking a black woman in a position of authority." However, her attempts to frame the investigation as racially or politically motivated have largely fallen flat. Many residents, including former supporters, have made it clear that their anger stems not from her identity, but from her actions. The issue, they argue, is not race, it's responsibility. The calls for accountability are coming from people of all backgrounds who feel misled, excluded, and abused by an administration that promised change but delivered controversy and chaos. Allegations against Henyard go beyond financial misconduct. Several former staffers and township employees have described a toxic work environment filled with fear, retaliation, and intimidation. Nate Fields, a South Holland resident and photographer who previously worked for the township, accused Henyard of firing him after promising job security. He said he felt unsafe and that Henyard used male associates to harass and silence employees, and similarly, multiple lawsuits have been filed by former Dalton employees, including one by a police officer who once served as part of Henyard's personal security detail. Another lawsuit, filed by former maintenance manager Dwayne Thrash, alleges wrongful termination and constitutional violations. Thrash claims he was fired under false pretenses while on approved leave, and asserts that his rights under the First and 14th Amendments were violated. These legal battles have only added to the sense of a collapsing administration under siege, with Henyard using her authority to retaliate against critics and silence opposition. Lori Lightfoot's appointment to aid the federal investigation has brought a new level of legal firepower to the case. A former U.S. attorney, Lightfoot is well equipped to unravel complexities of Henyard's actions and has already begun working closely with investigators to compile critical evidence. The scope of the investigation has now broadened significantly, with subpoenas revealing the extensive reach of Henyard's dealings, both personal and political. As more witnesses come forward and additional documents are reviewed, the potential for criminal charges grows. Former FBI officials suggest that the investigation is far from over. New evidence and cooperating witnesses could reshape the case in the coming months, leading to even more indictments or revelations. The public reaction has been swift and unforgiving. Residents of Dalton and Thornton Township have voiced their disappointment and anger in town halls, community meetings, and social media. Many feel betrayed by a leader who campaigned on promises of transparency and reform, only to descend into secrecy, defensiveness, and extravagance. Once praised as a potential trailblazer, Henyard is now widely seen as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of ethical leadership. Her approval ratings have collapsed, and demands for her resignation have grown louder even as she continues to deny wrongdoing. The evidence against her is overwhelming. The misuse of taxpayer funds, the culture of retaliation, and the widening legal net surrounding her allies paint a damning picture of an administration unraveling under the weight of its own misconduct. Whether Henyard will face criminal charges remains to be seen, but her political career appears to be all but over. The damage she has done to Dalton's reputation and finances will take years to undo. Residents are now focused on healing, rebuilding trust, and ensuring that such a breakdown in leadership never happens again. There is hope that the investigation will spark meaningful reform in local government, emphasizing the need for accountability, oversight, and transparency. The scandal has shaken Dalton to its core, but has also awakened a renewed demand for ethical leadership and community-first governance as federal authorities continue their work. The people of Dalton are watching closely, determined to see justice served and integrity restored.